who is this for? I think it's for two people. It's for people that just want to enjoy FPV, that saw those crazy FPV shots and movements, everything, and they just want to try it by themselves without building something. And for the filmmaking people, it's now the first ready to fly out of the box equipped FPV drone that you can buy and use.
This is a CineD Gear News video.
Hi everybody, my name is Nino. Today I'm on a video call with Ferdinand Wolf from DJI. How are you, Ferdy?
I'm great. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too. Thanks for taking the time to talk about the new DJI FPV drone. So this is completely new for DJI to release a first-person view drone. What can you tell me about it and why did DJI actually make one?
You know, on the former products we had on the Mavic series, even on the Phantom, on the Spark, we released a goggle that you could use with our former products like Spark, Mavic and Phantoms. So you could already experience this goggle FPV feeling a bit, but we never released something which came like 100% close to a normal FPV or race drone as you know it, where you basically have a fixed camera on the drone and have the roll, the pitch and everything go along with the drone and this like super low latency. So this is basically our first real step into the FPV world with an all-in-one drone after we released the DJI digital FPV system, which you, I guess, know. But it was only like components and you had to install it on your drone by yourself. And so many people constantly contacted us and said, hey, can't you make like an all integrated drone where we don't have to solder anything? We don't have to, put anything together or program everything. We just want like a typical DJI out of the box, one fits all solution basically that everybody can use.
I was talking about the same thing last year as well. With another drone maker, like a company that makes, a very, very small company that makes FPV drones. And I told them I think it's only a matter of time until DJI will enter this market too. As you mentioned, I mean, you are a professional FPV drone pilot as well. How can you describe this field, this industry, if people don't know it? I mean, it's a lot of self-built stuff, right?
Right. I mean, it's an interesting scene or industry that was growing a bit undercover in the past years. So it was basically in parallel with the normal drone development, basically from the beginning. But then the FPV, it was basically a slightly different area where people started to do a lot of DIY, build their own drones, and that continued way longer, this DIY spirit in that FPV scene. And it was more like a niche. People started to build those things, improve it, race it. It was more like focused on racing against each other. That's where the term race drone comes from. And only a bit later, they started to realize, okay, we can actually put a camera on top of that as well. I have one here. Having the camera fixed on a race drone lets you see and film all the roll, pitch movements. And that's something, it's a very different experience. For the filmmaker, I would say it's a different tool in the toolbox as well, Like in the early days, you had the helicopter, then the drones came and people thought, oh, we don't need helicopters anymore. Well, there was an overlapping and some parts of helicopters may be replaced by drones, but you still use helicopters for specific shots. And now we have the FPV drones entering the filmmaking market. And they kind of overlap with normal drones, but they don't replace normal drones. So it's just, I would say it's an additional tool in the filmmaker's toolbox, which can be used. And if you watch, today's commercials, you see a lot of drone shots and FPV shots, drones side by side, intercut.
Okay, so but what kind of customers do you think will buy this drone? Because you saw, like the experienced FPV drone pilots probably maybe still prefer to build their own drones, right?
So it really depends. If you come from the filmmaking world, you normally you don't want to build your stuff by yourself. You know, you're used to buy a camera, and you put your lens and you put it your camera. That's all you do, but you don't build your camera by yourself.
I'm definitely part of this group, I admit. I mean, I started flying drones with the first Mavic, and I've never stopped.
Yes. Yeah. This now goes in a very same direction. There will be a lot of people that stayed away from FPV before because they just didn't want to go in this building process. And this is basically like a Mavic or Inspire. You basically open the box, charge the battery, put the props on, and you're good to go and to fly. And the cool thing about this, it also helps you getting into FPV with like all the different modes we put into it. So it has 3 different modes and even sub modes, which step by step guide you to the ultimate mode of FPV flying, which is called the manual mode, where you basically can do rolls and flips, and you're completely free to go wherever you want in every direction. So this is something you can easily learn with this, and we even included a simulator that you can play with the goggle and with the remote controller, which is a super interesting part. Hopefully this will be picked up by a lot of reviewers as well, because I'm really stoked about the simulator as well. So you don't even have to go outside to get your first DJI FPV flights. You can just do it inside, but with your goggles. It's not something you do on a screen or a TV. You have it in the goggles with your real remote controller with those goggles, and it's feeding the simulator into the goggles. It's pretty cool technology.
It is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I have tried it. I only got access to the beta version a couple of days ago. I didn't dare fly the manual mode on this one yet, because after I tried the virtual flight app, I just almost crashed it immediately. It's such a completely different way of maneuvering a drone from normal drone flying. So I can only recommend everybody to really use the simulator app for quite a while until you actually switch to the manual mode.
But coming back to your question, who is this for? I think it's for 2 people. It's for people that just want to enjoy FPV, that saw those crazy FPV shots and movements, everything, and they just want to try it by themselves without building something, to just have fun with your friends together. You can fly together, you can have a lot of fun with it. And for the filmmaking people, it's now the first ready to fly out of the box, GPS enabled, auto return to home with all the safety features, equipped FPV drone that you can buy and use.
Now, when I think about FPV drones, before I saw this one, I actually thought about mostly those really tiny ones that even if you crash them, you can quite cheaply replace the props and stuff, because and the impact is not as severe because they are very lightweight, so you don't usually destroy the entire thing. I mean, this one is not exactly lightweight. It's around 800 grams, so it's much heavier than a Mini 2, for example. So why do you think this one needs to be that heavy?
If you compare it to something like that, this thing weighs pretty much the same. So if you use like the typical 5-inch race drone or freestyle drone with the proper battery and an action cam on top, you end up at 70, 50 or 800 grams as well. Of course, you cannot compare it to like the little CineWhoops, but those little CineWhoops, they are not made to fly in open environments. They will be pushed around by the wind. It's more like, flight for flying indoors, flying close to people. You can fly them outdoors, but it's not, there will be nowhere near as quick as those things. Those things go, and the DJI FPV, which you can see is basically the same size, they go easily over 100 kilometers, and you cannot do that with a CineWhoop. So that's the reason why this is basically as heavy as a normal freestyle or FPV filming drone you would use. But there's a big difference. This is a pretty huge battery. It's a 2000 milliamp if I'm not mistaken. So the flight time on this is way better on compared to this. So with this you can fly easily over 10-15 minutes, always depending on how fast you fly, how aggressive you fly. Whereas those are more like in the 5-minute range.
Yeah, I managed to get, on average, I had around 15 minutes, but I was flying quite fast sometimes when I tried it. I think the official specs say up to 20 minutes, but that's probably only if you go in normal mode at normal speeds.
Right. But there's no chance that the thing like this flies over 10 minutes.
I think we have to add that this one is actually flying up to 140 kilometers per hour, which is insane.
So in terms of speed, the top speed is the absolute same. So the top speeds you can reach are very comparable as well.
What's also crazy how fast it reacts. I mean, from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 2 seconds. Insanity.
Yeah, you can outrun very expensive cars with this drone. That's for sure. And there's another cool thing I always have to point out. You only have one camera on this, so what you see is what you get. You know, what you have on the goggles is actually what you film as well. Where on those drones you have this little FPV camera in the front, which is used for the live view on your goggles, and then you have the action camera on top. So you always have to make sure that you have the same angle on both. Otherwise, you won't have the same framing, but you still won't have the same framing as the FOV. The focal length on the action camera will always differ from the FOV and the focal length on your pilot's camera. The other advantage is you can control the angle of this camera via the remote controller. So there's a wheel like you use from all the Mavics and Phantoms and Inspires. So you can in flight change the camera angle, which is very important when flying FPV drones, because the camera angle basically tells how fast you can go when you fly forward. So if you have a high camera angle, because the quad tilts when you fly forward, you're faster. So if you want to chase a fast car, you have to have a very high camera angle. So the camera actually is level and looks forward. But then if you go from a chase scene with a fast car to something where you have to fly more slowly around a person or something, you basically have to land with this and adjust the camera angle of both cameras to something more, conservative like this, so you can fly slower. And if you want to chase a skier or a snowboarder, you actually have to go to a negative camera tilt, because you go down hills, down a mountain, and this can all be done in air with this system, because you only have this camera which can be remotely controlled.
That's very, very interesting for me to hear, because I come from the filmmaker who uses the ready-made drones, kind of like the Mavic line. And that thought process, what you just explained, is something that didn't even occur to me when I tested it, to be honest, but it makes a lot of sense, of course.
Yes, and there's another thing that comes with it. I'm very glad that you pointed this out, because once you're in the air with this one, there's no change to control this camera anymore. Basically, you push on the start button, the record button, and you take off. And then the next time you touch this camera or can adjust anything is when you land and stop the recording. So, we filmmakers know this. Oh yeah, sun is out, let's go, you have your exposure right, and then you go up, and then there's a cloud moving in. Well, while you're in air, you cannot do anything on a system like this. You cannot control the camera anymore. So on the DJI FPV, as it's an all-integrated system like our other drones as well, you can easily, while in air, adjust your exposure time, your ISO. You can even change the white balance. Everything can be done, like you used from a normal Mavic drone, right? You have the full control while you're in air. Everything can be adjusted with a remote controller and via the menu of the goggles. So that's a huge advantage. And the same goes for the safety as well. I mean, this is still like the standard for FPV drones that are used for filmmaking at the moment, either with an action camera or with something like a Blackmagic or even a Komodo. But it's to be honest, the technology is Stone Age. I mean, they fly insanely good and fast and agile. That's super cool. But if you lose connection, those things will just either drop and kill the motors, or they have like a very rudimental, dangerous return to home mode where they try to come back to the starting point, but then they circle around and then they just drop because they're not fully integrated. They don't have any sensors on the front. They cannot avoid anything on the way back home. So there's no real return to home on those. On the DJI FPV, you have all the features that you're used to have on an Inspire or Mavic. If you use lose reception, which is very easy. If you go 100 km/h and you go behind, a rock face, it's easy to lose connection. This will just crash and this will just stay, will instantly brake, return to home, has its front sensors, so it will even avoid trees and buildings and all that stuff, and will just come back to you. Right? It will automatically land in front of you. This is something I wish I would have on those things.
Amazing. Yeah, there's another very new innovation, I would say, that DJI introduced with this drone, which is an extra accessory, the motion controller. Or can you tell us about this one?
Right. So I wouldn't say. So I'm super excited about this as well because it's something totally new. Since I was a child, I was used to control my radio controlled cars and airplanes and everything with something like this, where you have two sticks, and basically that never changed. So at DJI we thought it's maybe time for something new, for something more intuitive, and so this is basically the result of that, using gyroscopes and this trigger, which looks very similar and actually acts very similar, like from those slot car toys where you can race the cars. So yeah, this is like for going forward, and then the rest of the drone will be controlled with this.
Yeah, actually, I was quite excited using this as well. It's so intuitive. I gave this to my wife, who has never flown a drone before, but she was immediately able to fly around with the drone, and she knew where to go, how to move, and it takes no explanation. I mean, of course, it is a little bit more limited, I guess, because I didn't find a way of going straight up, straight down, or sideways with this. But if you just want to fly into the direction you're seeing, I think it's also a safer way to fly, I guess.
Yeah, so it's funny that what you're saying, because that's what I felt as well. We presented this motion controller to some press people as well, like on a live demo, and there were a lot of people that never flew a drone before, especially not an FPV drone. And it was so much easier for them to use this than using this. It was crazy. I'm not sure if a professional pilot, I'm not sure if he will be as precise as with this or even more precise. I'm not sure, but it's more fun to fly. It's more intuitive and enjoyable. That's the way I would say this is the biggest advantage of this. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would compare it to, writing on a keyboard is this, because it's kind of indirect. You do something here and you see it there. And this is more like handwriting for me. It's because you know where to go. You might not be able to be as precise in terms of what you write, or not as fast. But it will be an absolutely logical way of doing things. And I think if this is refined, I can see this being the future, even in professional.
Yeah, I'm absolutely curious to see how far this will get. And the plan is to make this also compatible with the DJI digital FPV system. So you might as well, control even like the, custom built drones and heavy lifters and all that stuff that is currently built for filming with FPV. So I'm very curious to see it and where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question, as a filmmaker, of course, we're always trying to, get new looks from how we shoot. Using an FPV drone is just one way of, getting different movements that you cannot get with any other drone, like normal drones, of course. But on the other hand, we also try to stick to the frame rates, the film frame rates, like 24p, or in Europe 25p, or sometimes 30p. Now, the DJI FPV drone, right now at least, can only shoot 4K in 50 and 60p. Why is that, and will that change in the future?
Well, that's a limitation that goes along with the concept of only having this one camera. So basically, as we use the camera in the front for filming and feeding the image to the goggle of the pilot, this is the limitation that comes with it, which cannot be overcome at this generation. So yeah, I see that's a drawback, but you know, you can still choose between 50 and 60 frames. And if you go to HD, you can shoot 120 frames as well.
Interesting. I didn't even think about that being the reason, but of course it makes total sense. You need this fast refresh rate when looking at the goggles, otherwise you get really motion sick.
Exactly. So 60 frames or 50 frames will be the refresh rate you then have on the goggles. And if you go lower than this, the FPV experience won't be enjoyable anymore. And if you go to HD, you have 120 frames recording, and then you will have 120 frames refresh rate, or not only refresh rate, but you know, actual pictures in the video transmission. So there will be transmitted 120 images per second.
Interesting. Talking about the gimbal, you said that this has only a one-axis gimbal, which is of course very different from the Mavic series, which has three-axis gimbals, which gives you the level horizon and so on, and a much more stable image when flying. So why is that? Why is it not possible to put a three-axis gimbal into an FPV drone?
Well, I wouldn't say it's impossible to do that, but the point mostly is that you don't need it that much. Because the reason why you have a three-axis gimbal on a normal drone is that you want like super stabilized footage in all axes. On FPV drones, you want to have the horizon roll, and you want the pitch to go up and down on those, you know, crazy FPV moves. So this is something where you basically would lock the axes anyways. And the reason why we have the one-axis gimbal is, first, we can adjust the camera angle, which is super cool. And on the beginner modes, the gimbal will make sure that the horizon always is level when flying. The pitch axis is always level, so it's way easier for beginners, because normally on a drone like this, if you go forward, as I already mentioned before, the camera will go down. If you brake, you will look up into the sky, which makes it very difficult, especially if you fly high camera angles like this. If you want to land, you basically have to come in with a lot of speed so you can see what's in front of you. Because if you come in slowly, you will look up into the sky and won't see anything. So on this, you know, you can just go super quick, and then you switch to a normal mode, and then the camera will just go forward and you can easily land. So that's the advantages and the charm of this system. So that's the reason why we have the one-axis gimbal, so we can adjust the tilt or the pitch. And the rest of the stabilization, you still need some stabilization, of course, to make it super smooth. This will be done by electronic image stabilization, and this is done here in the body itself. So we use the gyro data and the image processing pipeline to real-time stabilize the footage the camera films. So that's something we fix with electronic image stabilization instead of a mechanical image stabilization. And there's another reason. Sorry, I have to elaborate a bit more on this topic. There's another reason. Everybody knows that gimbals are very, prone to break and are very fragile, and this is nothing you want to necessarily have. You don't want to have a complex, easy to break gimbal system on an FPV drone that goes super fast. So having only one axis gimbal makes everything more sturdy and robust, of course.
Very interesting. So I still need to wrap my head around really flying this, so it looks cool.
It looks already pretty good.
I look like a dork, but
You can cover your lockdown bad hair with that.
But let's talk about pricing and availability. When can people get this, and how much will it be?
So it will be released on the 2nd of March. We're super curious. We have stock, so you will be instantly able to order, and it will get delivered to you very quickly. The DJI FPV combo will be $12.99 USD.
That's these three, right? Like this.
That's exactly, and I think you get an additional battery as well. I have to check. Yeah. So including charge, it's basically everything you need to have to be ready to go. The motion and the euro price will be 1,349 euros. Depends on the VAT as well. The motion controller will be 199 USD and 149 euros. And then there's the combo I just mentioned will include everything you need to fly. And there's a Fly More kit like you used from DJI, where you get where you get 2 batteries and a charging hub. And this will be sold separately, so you can buy that for 299 USD and 279 euros. So this will include 2 batteries and a charging hub. So this is something you this time buy separately on top of the combo if you like to. So you get the batteries and the charging hub. And the charging hub will charge 3 batteries. So if you buy that Fly More combo, you will be able to charge all 3 batteries. One after another, like on all DJI charging hubs. And so you get that.
Perfect. Thank you, Ferdy, for the time. Thank you for the insights. It's really, really cool to hear all that from somebody who knows FPV drones. So a lot of my questions actually, like a lot of my concerns, whatever, make a lot more sense now that I know why some things were done in the way they were done. I really look forward to training more with the Virtual Flight app. It's really nice. You can switch the modes, you use the actual controller.
That's the cool thing, that you use the actual hardware, you use the controller and you use the goggles. It projected to the goggles, which is something really cool. So it's way more, realistic than just looking at a screen. Yeah. So I would really encourage everybody, to try this FPV experience, because there's, it is as close as it can get to real flying. It's like the ultimate dream of being Superman or whatever, flying through the air. And with this product, finally you have something which is super easy for everybody with those modes. You can instantly try, the basic modes, the beginner modes. You have all the safety belts that you use from DJI products. You can start slowly and then you can go all the way up to the full manual mode, and it's a real cool experience. This is now the gateway to FPV for everybody.
I agree, actually. Even though I didn't use the manual mode, but in the sports mode, even when I tried it the first time, it gives you such an immediate sense of freedom that I haven't experienced with other drones yet. And also using these goggles for the first time, it's so useful. I would even like to use those on normal Mavic drones and so on, because you always otherwise have the problem that there is sunlight on your screen, you don't actually see something. There's no distractions. It's like looking at a huge cinema screen.
Exactly. It's like sitting in the front row of a huge cinema. And then this is, it's super cool.
And you have much more confidence in flying, simply because you see everything and there's very minimal overlays. So that is really cool. And I hope that at some point you will also be able to use this with all kinds of drones. That would be really useful.
It will most likely be. I cannot tell too much, but this is, we're trying to make everything compatible with each other, and so this will definitely not be the last product where you can use those goggles. It's nothing like a one-time gadget. This will stay for a while. And this goggles, by the way, can be used with a normal digital FPV system as well. So those are the V2 goggles, and you can use those goggles with a normal DJI digital FPV system. So if you like this a lot, but you at some point want to build your own drone, if you want to get into that, DIY thing, you can already use those goggles, and you also can use the controller to build your own drone as well. You only have to get the air unit, and then you can start building everything from scratch if you're interested in that.
Awesome. Thank you, Ferdy, for taking the time. Good luck with the new product, and hopefully next time we meet again in real life at some point.
I hope so.
It's really time now.
Absolutely.
And thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned to CineD for a lot more videos like this one. Please also check my review video of the DJI FPV. It is really a first look review from somebody who's never flown an FPV drone before, but it might be good for you to watch if you're used to the Mavic line like I was. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks.